Hello and welcome to the Homeless Consultant channel. My name is Paul B. I am the Homeless Consultant, and I was just relieved of $171 of my hard-earned money. I'd like to tell you about it. It involves buying things for this vehicle that are meant to try to help me stay alive against all odds. And as I was researching what to get, I looked on YouTube, looking at reviews for a lot of items, fans and such, and I thought, well, I'm going to make my contribution with the unique homeless consultant vibe to it, because the things that I'm getting are not just the conveniences that all these people out there are spending money or going into debt for so they can fill their home with a million tools that they may never use, or they'll build a bookshelf with it instead of helping the poor and the homeless. I'm trying to buy something that's actually going to keep me alive. And let me tell you why that's the case. 6 years ago, when I became homeless and I started living in this car, it generally ran fine, for the most part. The one thing that never did work in here, well, the two things, were the heater and the air conditioner. Now, the heater actually, now that I think of it, the heater did work, it just didn't work well. But it worked enough. The air conditioner has never once worked in here. The vent worked. So for all those years, you know, in the winter it gets down to minus 20 degrees, wind chills to minus 40 or so in Minnesota. In the summer it gets up to sometimes pushing 120 degrees. And inside the car it is normally 10 to 20 degrees hotter than it is out there. When you get up into the 120 degree range, it can become, I mean, it's life-threatening. The U.S. government, the national, NOAA, the National Weather Service, all of them state clearly that the temperatures I'm exposed to in this car are life-threatening. They're deadly. There isn't even any debate on it. Just like there's no debate on the fact that Minnesota doesn't have any homeless shelters or any place for homeless people to get cool. They closed them all so they could build a football stadium. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So the homeless guy who works for a living, instead of sitting around accepting stimulus checks that my taxes pay for, or taking unemployment — I've never taken welfare or unemployment, I work for a living — instead of getting to sit inside and play video games all day like the Minnesotans do, I have to spend my hard-earned money on something to try to keep me alive in this car. Alright, so as I was researching it, I was watching all these YouTube videos on some of the things I wanted to or needed to get. And I thought, well, I'm going to make my contribution here. Last year, two things in particular went wrong with this car that are very big problems. Well, actually three, but the other, that's not relevant. The oil leaking into the alternator, where I have to periodically replace the alternator, that ain't a good thing. Doesn't do much for my finances. Do you budget for an annual replacement of your alternator? I do. But the big one was this window stopped opening. Doesn't open anymore. So while it's 120 degrees outside, or 100 degrees, and this week, if you look at the weather, it's going to be up in the high 90s. I think it's going to get up to 98. I can't open this window. But also, the vent went out. So even that little bit of air I had coming out of there doesn't work. So now what I have is a blower, and I'll show you. I made a little demo here. I'll show you. I start up the car. I turn on the vent, and put a paper towel up there. There's nothing. There's no air at all. There's just nothing. So I don't have air conditioning, I don't have a vent, I can't open this window. Now at night, when it's about 100 degrees at the worst, maybe when I'm trying to sleep, and the word trying is the key there, you know, and trying not to be bothered by the police, because I'm the bad guy, I'm homeless, so I must be a problem. I'm the one they're going to come up to and talk to about You know, can I see your ID, please? I have to search for warrants because you're homeless, therefore there must be a warrant on you. It's not all these housed people out there who are doing all the drugs. It's the 4 million homeless people in America who are maintaining a multi-hundred-billion-dollar industry in drugs, right? They've just got money to burn, those homeless people. It's not the people in the houses out there who are keeping the drug trade going. Of course, if you look at the statistics, you'll find that the crimes out there, you know, larceny, robbery, burglary, carjacking, murder, rape, about 0.1% of those crimes are committed by homeless people. All of the others are committed by these wonderful house people who, when I sit in a public parking lot, the police never go up to them and say, can I see your ID, please? I need to check for warrants. They only come up to my car. Maybe it's because my car looks like it's ready to fall apart. Last night, Memorial Day. Last night I had to sit at Cub Foods for about an hour. Didn't want to, but I had to sit there. And if you can believe it, I saw another drug deal just like I put in here 4 years ago. Now the police didn't come in and mess with anybody, but if they'd come into the lot, I promise you, based on experience, they would have come up to me and asked for my ID. They would not have went up to the drug dealer or the drug buyer. The reason is because they both had very nice new looking cars. And I don't. So while I'm in this car and I'm going to be trying to stay alive this summer, when it's basically going to be over 100 degrees in here, when I come out of work doing my job, not stimulus checks, unemployment, welfare, but work, my job, when I come out of there, this car is as if someone hits me in the face with a baseball bat when I open this door. That's what it feels like. And then I have to climb in here and stay in there for the next 16 hours before I go to work again. All the liquids I'm drinking all day at work and in this car just come out in sweat. And then I get to go into my office again. And I get to do it 5 times in a row every week. How do you think I smell at the end of that week? Because Minnesota doesn't provide any hygiene services for the homeless. You see, they closed it all down to build a football stadium for a privately owned football team, which to my knowledge has done nothing for the homeless either. You might want to watch my video, Minnesota Nice, Less Than Zero, where I talk about just the mere rumor that football stadium was going to be used to help homeless people caused an uproar in Minnesota. People were furious about that. You see, I'm not going to get any help in this state. This is the state that made me homeless. This is the state that keeps me homeless. I have to look after myself, so I had to spend $171. And that's just today. There's a lot more I have to do. All the repairs I put into this car, many times more than the amount of money I spent to purchase the car outright, 9 years ago? Just since I've been homeless. Alright, so let's get started on this, folks. I needed to get a fan. Okay, I think I mentioned a moment ago, for the last few years I had this O2 Cool fan from Menards. The thing was like $34 with a power adapter you can plug into the wall. I have this power inverter that I plug into the cigarette lighter. Now, of course, if the car isn't running, it will drain the battery, and the battery's dead. And I'm going to make a whole nother video on that. There's no point going into it now. But the point is, the reason I got that thing was because it ran on batteries. Specifically, it ran on 6 D-sized batteries. D, the big, heavy, log batteries. And hey, what do you know? Menards sold D batteries in big boxes of them. Maybe that's because it only worked for about 6 hours in that fan. Throughout the summer, the amount of money that I spent on those D-sized batteries for those 16 hours I was in this car, throughout the summer, if you had carried that out through the whole 12 months, the amount of money I spent on those batteries would have been just shy of how much I spent on rent for the entire year for my home, which I was illegally displaced from. And no one in the state of Minnesota will do anything about that. The landlord's still running around free as a bird. The police who refuse to enforce the law, still running around free as a bird. In fact, the only police officer who isn't running around free as a bird is the one who tried to protect Minnesotans from a junked out drug addict who tried to pass fake $20 bills and then got behind the wheel of a car when he was so hyped up on fentanyl that he was this close to death. That police officer's sitting in a Minnesota prison now. But the ones who refuse to enforce the law to help me being terrorized and tortured by my neighbors, they're fine. All the way up from the bottom, all the way up to the governor's office. They're all free as a bird. All those attorneys I went to, who I told them real quick the story, and you could just see them. Little computers going off, and ka-ching! They look at the balance sheet, and they're like, I'm not going to make any money from this. This is just one of those, right versus wrong, finding justice, making the world a better place kind of thing. I'm not touching this with a 20-foot pole. I'm a Minnesota lawyer. And they would just tell me to basically go to hell in no uncertain terms. Oddly enough, every single one of them, without exception, every single one of them, it's almost like the law required them to do this, would say, by the way, there's a statute of limitations, so make sure you get help before that runs out. You know what, folks? I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations ran out while I was going to all those attorneys who not one of them would help me achieve justice. So, 6 years later, I'm in this car spending $171, hoping that what I just bought will help to keep me alive this year with no window and no vent, in addition to no air conditioning. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about other things, such as if I open this door to create airflow, if I fall asleep like that, puts me at incredible risk of bodily injury or carjacking, having everything I have stolen. I'm not going to go into those details, but there's a whole bunch of factors involved in my decision to buy these items. And I had to think very carefully about them. But what I need first and foremost is something to get air in here, something to simulate coolness, even if it's blowing hot air in my face. I need a fan. That O2 Cool thing, the power adapter on it, I have had to replace all the power adapters for everything in this car. That laptop, all my laptop computers that I've had, the first one and the second one, this camera. Because they all get wadded up in this car all the time, and they short out and they break. On the O2 Cool thing, the cable at the end, I'll show you real quick with this camera. It looked just like this kind of thing, and this piece just broke right off. Of course, I've got some tape on this one, but it isn't really helping because this is also broken off in there. I have to replace those power adapters all the time. When they're in this car getting all wadded up like this, they break and short out very quickly. Very quickly. I had to replace the power adapter for that new laptop I got, and I got it last January or so. It was less than 3 months before I had to replace it, the one that came with it, because it shorted out like that. I spent a tremendous amount of money on power adapters, just because I have to keep them in a car where I can't keep them nice from getting all bunched up. It's a good thing I have a job. If I lived like other Minnesotans, I might not get enough of a stimulus check to pay for all that. Excuse me. Whew. Wow. Huh. So I need a fan. I can't afford a fan that takes 6 AA batteries like Menards sold me. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I didn't know what to do. I started looking around for anything that might be a portable air conditioner. YouTube had an ad for this thing called Breeze Max. A little box, supposed to be an air conditioner, had one of those robot voices reading a 25-minute infomercial. And I'm just sitting there watching it. And, this high school teacher invented this to keep his students cool on super hot days when they couldn't study, and all of a sudden they skyrocketed and went to Harvard and Yale. And I'm like, okay, cool. And it's less than $100, so okay, I look it up, this Breeze Max thing. Just a little box. It's supposed to, and the big complaint about it, from reviewers, was that it only cools a small area. Well, guess what, folks? This is my home. This cabin inside this car. Specifically, this seat. I can't even get in that back seat. And I always have stuff in the passenger, so I can't sit there. This seat is my life. This is where I've sat, essentially, for 16 hours a day for the last 6 years. Well, for the most part, when I'm not at work, where I also sit in an office all day. So I look into the BreezeMax a bit more because, as a rule, if it sounds too good to be true, it is probably not true. And hey, what do you know? It turns out it wasn't so true. Apparently this thing doesn't really do jack. Doesn't really help. Good old YouTube, you know, they'll shadow ban my videos so that I only get 30, 50 views after 5 years of making 200 videos of making content that tells people the truth about something that I'm really not aware of a single source out there where they will get this truth. The reality of what's going on with homelessness and the reality of Minnesota Nice, which is a very dangerous and deadly cult. YouTube will gladly shadow ban this, but they'll show you a bunch of advertisements who pay them money for something like that, BreezeMax. Praise God Almighty, I did not blow $100 on that stupid product. So that left me, however, as I was looking at that, one thing came to my mind. What about a workplace fan? You know, for the people out there who do work for a living, construction and painters and such. They have little fans, and I figure, well, they might have battery powered. Well, it turns out there's all kinds of them. There's a whole bunch of brands, and I learned a lot about what's out there. So they have, for example, at Harbor Freight, they have Bauer. The Bauer brands are red and black. Then they have Hercules, which is the better brand. Those are blue. Then if you go to Lowe's, they have Craftsman, you know, which used to be with Sears. I don't know what it's doing with Lowe's now. If you go to Home Depot, you've got Ryobi, the kind of, you know, vomit green color and stuff like that. And then you got, oh boy, they have DeWalt, the orange ones. They have Milwaukee something or other, the red. What they have are all these tools, you know, drills and saws and blowers and vacuum cleaners and lights and all these different things, and fans. And they take a rechargeable battery pack, a lithium pack. So like this camcorder would. But they're big honking things, really heavy, huge. I mean, they're like with the LED light at Harbor Freight, the battery pack was bigger than the light itself, and you have to snap it on there to keep the light. But so that what that happens is with each of these brands, they sell chargers and they sell the batteries. And then they sell these items, and you take the battery and you stick it in the drill when you need the drill. You take it out, you stick it in the chainsaw when you need the chainsaw. Take it out, stick it in the vacuum cleaner or the blower or whatever. This sounds great. It sounds great on paper. If I had a home and I had a tool area, you know, it's the kind of thing I'd probably get there as well. So the question was, which fan do I get? Well, that's when I started doing all the research and watching the videos. I started reading all the forums online. I started going to all these visiting these places and looking at them, going to YouTube, looking at YouTube videos. And as I did so, I learned some things. You know, I'm not going to say I mastered this, and it was only about 4 days that I spent looking at this. I have probably spent more than 20 hours total online, just online, and probably another 4 hours or so, maybe 6, out and about different places. That's a lot of time, and I took a lot of stuff where I downloaded it so I could look at it later. So, you know, it's been many hours over the last 4 days that I've been studying and researching, specifically the fans, but also the other tools. Because I thought, well, if I have to get a fan and I have to get a charger and I have to get a battery, I might as well get one from a brand that has other things I could use. So one of the things that became very apparent from this was that these batteries are prone to failure. And by that, what I mean is you buy, and the battery, like the big battery that lasts the longest, those things can be $80. You know, at Harbor Freight, it were $60 for the 5 amp. Some of these other ones, maybe $130, up to that much money, just for one battery. One battery. And there's all these reports of people who say, well, I put it in the charger, it worked fine 2 or 3 times, and then all of a sudden the charger said, defective battery. And then that led me over to these, electronic project people, old Radio Shack geeks. Bless their hearts. Love them. But, you know, I'm an old Radio Shack geek myself from back in the 80s. And we're dangerous, you know. And they're saying, well, here's how you fix it. You take it all apart, and then you plug into the wall, and you basically, like you would with the CPR, you know, clear, and you basically do that to your lithium battery. And I'm just thinking, you know what? I got enough things to worry about in this car. There's enough reasons this car could catch fire, including Minnesotans, these creeps who stalk me all the time and who do not want me saying what I say about Minnesota in these videos, who would love to see me die. And, you know, setting homeless people on fire is a national pastime if you've watched this video. I've got enough things to worry about there than having a freaking lithium battery, this big honking thing, you know, turn into a flamethrower inside my car. So I'm not going to do that. If the battery dies, I'm screwed. I'm not going to play games with it. I'd have to replace it at another $70 or $130. Alright? So, and check this out. This is exactly what I've been trying to make the point of. One interesting thing I've learned over these years being in this car, being stalked, is that the middle class stalkers, you know, the ones with the expensive cars and the clothes and everything and the hairdos, they stalk from their cars. They're the ones who pull up in front of me and they point their headlights at me for the most part and they do it from a great distance. But the ones who come up right next to me, it's always the gangbangers. Which is another reason I don't really want to keep this door open with my knee all the time. No one else is walking around. You just saw it. Where was I? These batteries are prone to failure for no good reason when they really haven't failed. There's something in the electronics that says the voltage has gone down underneath the threshold. The thing might still have a good 10 volts in it, but it just went below the threshold, so the meter in the charger reads it as defective and you're out of battery, even though there's nothing wrong with the battery except that the electronics didn't let you recharge it. I can't afford that, folks. I can't afford that. What started this whole endeavor with me was when I was in Harbor Freight and I saw a fan for $34, a battery-powered fan, and I was just like, thank you. I thought, wow, $34, thank you so much. That's how much that O2 Cool thing from Menards was. The thing that has 6 AA batteries all the time. Then I realized that it's $30 for a charger. And then I realized that it's for a battery that's even going to have that thing last for 6 hours. You know, $60, $70 for a battery. One battery. And I have to have more than one because I have to be able to swap them. I'm in this car 16 hours a day, not for 6 hours a day. So the price just kept going up and up and up. So then as I started looking around at the actual quality of all these, guess what I found? The same thing I find anywhere. You know, if I'm looking at music gear, you get this all the time. Oh, nothing beats a Fender Stratocaster. It's the best guitar in the world. Everyone who plays Les Pauls doesn't know what they're doing. They're crazy, those big heavy things. Then you got the Les Paul people, the Gibson cheerleaders coming out going, oh, what's wrong with these pansy Fenderites, those little girly guitars, they're going to play their little Stratocaster. You know, and you get this stuff where everyone's on one camp or another. Well, can you believe it? The guy who needs to find something here to help stay alive ended up having to spend, as I said, a good 20 hours listening to all these Tom, Dick, and Harrys who are nice and comfortable inside their homes, basically giving their opinions, their totally uninformed opinions, all too often. And it took me, and I had to go through all of that to determine who was reliable. Well, I am very sorry about the interruption there, but the camera overheated. You see, it's very hot in this car. That's why I'm in peril of dying, as are 4 million other homeless people in the United States of America in these temperatures. If you could see the contraption I have holding this camera in about the only shady part of this car, you wouldn't believe it's holding the camera. Anyway, to take off where I left off, I quickly learned that the people out there in the tool world are the same as musicians, or probably the same as in anything, sports teams, whatever. You know, mine's the best, yours blows. Yours is junk. So someone who's a big fan of DeWalt would say, oh, the Harbor Freight stuff, that's all garbage. It just breaks down, doesn't work, it's just crap. You know, it has brushes in it. You know, mine's brushless. Mine's brushless. Which reminds me a lot of, you know, I've told you before, Minnesota, it's like the anti-California. California, you had young people driving around in convertibles all the time. Because they're young. They're out having fun, they're out picking up chicks, they're out showing themselves off. Minnesota, it's the other way around. You never see a young person driving one. It's all these old, balding, creepy guys who look like they'd be sitting in a van outside an elementary school. These are the only people who drive convertibles around Minnesota, and they're driving around, look at me, look at me, please, 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 look at me. Won't somebody look at me, please? Look at my car, look at my Detmobile. I mean, you see, my point with this is that I'm trying to save my life here. I need to find a fan that will help keep me alive, because these Minnesotans are perfectly happy and content to just let me die. But when I go out to research things, what do I get? I get these trivial, what amounts to like the equivalent of street gangbangers in the home tool world. Oh, DeWalt sucks. What are you talking about? Those can't stand the color scheme. You know, their batteries are too heavy. And, you know, that's made out of plastic. That has brushes. Just so I had to weed through all this crap with all these people who just. I mean, come on, people. Just tell me what the product does. Does it work? Is it reliable? You know, if you preferred that you had gotten something better, fine. But you get what you pay for. Everyone on there seems like they're as poor as I am, like they're just barely able to even buy any of this stuff. They're always trying to get deals and coupons and discounts, even as they play themselves up. Look at all the tools I have. I mean, it's like they can't afford it or something, but I don't understand what's going on. But that's why I had to spend so many hours researching this, because I had to weed through all that crap. And I have to get a brand new paper towel out because I soiled the other one with sweat already. So you have to go through a certain amount of that to determine who is a reliable witness and who's just one of these pain in the necks who is just a cheerleader for a particular brand or a particular store. So that's the next step I had to go through. With that, one thing I figured out was that it does seem like there's at least the risk of these batteries doing the, you know, defective battery light when they're not defective. But it seems to be that way with any brand. I mean, it's just like anything else, folks. I hate to tell you this, but all this stuff's made in the same place, the same factory. All these people who are saying, oh my gosh, I would never touch an Ibanez. I would never touch an Ibanez guitar. I only use ESP guitars. It's like, hey, Bob, they're made in the same factory. By the same people, probably. So all these tools, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, how can they have all these brands? Harbor Freight has 2 of them. Home Depot has a bunch of them. Lowe's has got them. Walmart had a few. And I'm just thinking, like, where did all these things come from? All of a sudden you got all these cordless tools with the battery and charger scheme. It's just a racket. I mean, if the batteries worked well and they were affordable, it would be a great, wonderful thing. But the battery is the weak link in this, obviously. And the batteries are probably all made by the same company in the beginning. I mean, at least the internals. I mean, it's funny, in the music world, people are always dissing Behringer, which they should. Behringer's just a company from hell, but I mean, they're always dissing it, you know, saying, oh, it's not reliable, their stuff's junk and all this. And it's like, I hate to tell you this, folks, but Behringer built a city in communist China where they make most of the components that go into all the other stuff that you think is so cool. You know, the Mackeys, the JBLs, all these, oh, these are really good brands. Their guts are made by Behringer. You see, but you see, you got to research, and whenever you're going into something you're not used to, like me with tools and things, you got to learn, you got to start from scratch and learn this stuff. Then it became obvious right away that, well, this stuff's probably made by the same factory somewhere. Taiwan, China, I don't know, I haven't even bothered looking. But the point is, you couldn't really say one was better than another. I mean, when it came to fans, the Milwaukee one was a dud right out of the gate because it was the only one that didn't have the ability to plug a wall plug into it. It only ran on batteries. Well, what good is that? What if your battery runs out? I mean, every other one of these, and that fan costs like $150 or something. The Harbor Freight one, like I said, was $34. And the $34 one took a plug in addition to the battery. It's like, this whole scene is just another racket. It became obvious right out of the gate, and I felt really bad for all these people who are buying all these tools and wasting a portion of their life with this discussion, you know. Well, this brand's better than this brand, and that brand sucks, and this brand, but, you know, I mean, I did find some videos, though, that were really good, you know, that actually got, you know, they cut to the chase. And they told you, for this particular tool, here's how it functions, or these two tools compared, and they used, you know, certain criteria and specifications to give you a real-world comparison between the two. But finding those was a nightmare. Anyway, in the end, what happened was this. I had no idea what to do. I just had no idea. There was so much. The signal to noise ratio was so bad online that after all that research, I didn't know what to do. That little Bauer thing from Harbor Freight could have been fine. The only thing I knew was I didn't want the best one, the Milwaukee's best, or I thought that was a beer or something, but this Milwaukee thing, it doesn't take a plug. You know what? I don't want to spend all this money on batteries, and I live in a car. I don't have the ability to plug in a battery charger all the time. It's going to be hard enough to keep these batteries charged. So now let me tell you about just kind of companies in terms of how I went about, because I had to get one. First thing to look at was Walmart. Forget it, kid. Anything I can do to avoid Walmart, I will do from the beginning anyway. They've helped destroy the United States of America for the benefit of a small number of family members who really haven't worked for a living. I don't want to support that. And they've just exploited and enslaved countless people. Walmart, out. The next one was Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight I like as a store. I always have. It's an interesting place. They have all kinds of weird and wacky, wonderful stuff in there. Low prices. Not always the best stuff in the world. Kind of depends what you're getting. Harbor Freight cheerleaders are now spitting on their monitors, I'm sure. The fact is, I did like the Bauer line. I mean, I would have liked Hercules, but Hercules doesn't have enough tools. It only has like 10 other tools at present. So if I invest my money in all that stuff, I'm not going to be able to get a vacuum cleaner and the other stuff I want to get later. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go with the Bauer. But then I add up the numbers, and again, the batteries are the weak link. I just can't afford it. For me to get enough batteries so that I'm always having power in here and I don't have to sit in this car in the heat with no ability to plug in a charger and charge up the battery, I have to buy several batteries, or at least 2 powerful batteries. And it's just not feasible. I mean, the Bauer fan is the cheapest of all. It's $34, but I mean, a $60 battery for one, that gives me maybe 6 hours of high speed, which I need. I need double high speed in here. And here's the other thing. Since I haven't been able to try any of these fans out, the word on the street that I was seeing was that they don't really put out a lot of air like a personal fan does. It's more like some kind of airflow, you know, for drying paint and stuff. These are work fans. So I went to Harbor Freight, and the problem there was that they either had the fan, but they were out of stock on the batteries, or they were out of stock on the battery charger, but they had the battery, the smaller battery, but not the bigger one, and they had the fan. And it was just like, okay, well, you can drive over to this Harbor Freight on the other side of town. It's like, I'm not going to Minneapolis. You're not taking me into that hellhole. I'm not going near Minneapolis. I value my life. I'm not going near that place. If you don't have it here, I'm not buying it. Now, the thing is, I really like the manager of this Harbor Freight. I like him. He's a really good guy. He's been really good to me, and I'll tell you why. 5 years ago, you know, it was 1 year after I ended up living in the car. I had sold off everything that I had remaining, for what it's worth. I was at the end of my rope. There wasn't much left. There wasn't much hope left. I had a few small little things to sell that might keep me for another week or two, and that was it. I went to Harbor Freight and I interviewed for a job because they were going to open up this one in Burnsville. And And that's where I met this manager, and I liked him. He's a nice guy. I like him a lot. And he wanted to hire me. He wanted to hire me. And I was upfront and honest with him. Unlike a lot of other people out there, I was upfront and honest. And I said, look, I'm homeless. I live in a car. I'll do a great job for you. I will, as I always have for others. But this is the situation. That means I don't have a home address. So if you're offering me a job, I have to ask, can I have the things for work mailed to this store where I am, because I would be working there, right? So I'm obviously available to get those mails. And he said, I'll check with corporate. And he checked with corporate, and he came back and he said, I'm sorry, but they won't do it. That was about 5 years ago. I had to sell one of the last things I had to get this car out to Bloomington for that interview. After that, I think I only had about 2 weeks left. For those of you who watched my videos, about 2 weeks later was that period where it was the end for me. And I was resolved that my life is over. It was over and done. I had 1 day left. I had a tank of gas, no food, no money, nothing. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. Because in my videos, you'll see I went to over 100 churches in Minnesota, and they all just said, here's a pamphlet with government social service agencies in it. You'll find out how that went in other videos. It doesn't go well, by the way. It's a fraud. It's a fake. Social services is a waste of your tax dollars, and you should be offended by that as much as I am. So all these churches just blew me off and left me to die. They didn't care. It's the apostasy. That's what was prophesied in the Bible in the end times. You will have the church leave. It will fall away from God. And that's exactly what's happened. I went out. I had 2 more churches I was going to try. If that didn't work, I was going to drive this car south as far as it would take me. I was just going to go out into the wilderness, and I was just going to sit there and let nature take its course. Because there was nothing left. There's nobody in the state who will help me. There's no agency that would do anything. They're all out for themselves. The government could care less. They just want me to die. The people who watch my videos just want me to die from Minnesota. So I was just going to give them what they wanted. But I wasn't going out without a fight. I was going to use that tank of gas. This is after Harbor Freight said, no, we're not going to hire you because we're not going to send your paperwork to the store that you work at where you would be to receive this. The first church blew me off, just like everyone else. That one was a Catholic church, of all things. A place I normally would not set foot in. They just blew me off again. The second one was a Catholic church. I was desperate. They blew me off as well, but after they blew me off, the nun there, she suddenly said, you know what, though? You know what? I had a fellow call me up last week, and it was only like a few days earlier, last week or something. And he said he was just looking for someone to help. And he said, I wonder if he can help. And they put me in touch with this guy. About 1/2 hour later, I was at this guy's home. They welcomed me into their home. And all of a sudden, everything changed for me. I had a shower. Within a few days, I got my hair cut. I was getting good, nutritious, home-cooked food for the first time since I could no longer cook in my home. These people were wonderful for me. Within a couple of weeks, I had gotten a job. Because now I had an address. Now I did not have to commit a felony by putting a fake address, an address that was not my residence. All those forms you fill out, employment forms, tax forms, they all say at the bottom, under penalty of perjury, a felony, I certify that this information is true and correct. Well, if you don't have a home address, you can't put a home address on there, can you? You're committing a felony. You might want to watch my video called A Homeless Man's Challenge to Colin Kaepernick. You know, the big fluffy-haired guy, millionaire guy who throws some kind of a ball back and forth, football, basketball, I don't know, something like that, who's out there whining and moaning about how, oh, black people are oppressed, you know. And you can list out, 1,000 black people who are millionaires and billionaires and successful Nobel Prize winners, all this. You can list it out to the end time. He's still, oh, we're so oppressed. And I made the video showing, oh yeah, try being homeless once, no matter what your color is. For one thing, you have to commit a felony to do anything in this society, because without that address, you're screwed. And if you go sit in a parking lot with all these other house people around, the police will come up to you and ask for your ID and ignore those people. Even if they're selling drugs, even if that guy's in there with a child doing who knows what, and if that guy over there, the lawyer, the politician, is cheating on their spouse. The police will come up here to me, to the homeless person. Colin Kaepernick. You don't know what oppression is. When that family took me in, everything changed. Because they asked me, what do you need, Paul? They didn't tell me like social services. They asked me, what do you need? And I told them. And they just started knocking them out, knocking them out, knocking them out. And what do you know? Within a few weeks, I had a job. Hey, guess what? It's the same job I have now, 4.5 years later. And if Harbor Freight had hired me, I would have been there for probably 4.5 years. I'm not going to say I'm the greatest expert. I mean, what I do now has a huge amount of knowledge base to learn. But I have mastered a lot of things there. And the feedback I get from the people I work with, and the people I work for, and the people I do things for, is very, very good. Everyone's very impressed with what I do there. And I don't say that to blow my own horn. It's the way I've always been. I don't want a job where I sit around doing nothing. Harbor Freight could have had that. But they couldn't be troubled to just send the little pieces of paper to the very same store that I would be going to work at. So thanks to their actions, I was ready to just go out and die and leave this world, and just because there's nothing else I could do. It was a miracle from God. I hope you understand what I just said. It was a miracle from God that the very last church I was going to before I was going to take that drive just happened to have heard from that guy a week earlier, and that family was so wonderful to help me. If I was left to things like Minnesotans or Minnesota Social Services or Harbor Freight, I wouldn't be here addressing you right now. I wouldn't even be a skeleton, because you know what they do with people like me? They cremate you and bury you in a mass grave. Because you have no family, you have no identity. You're just an indigent. A useless, worthless indigent. So when it came to the idea of investing my money into Harbor Freight's tools, I couldn't get that out of the back of my mind. Now, I'm not boycotting them. Those poor people, I think they just don't know better. They're filled with osteo-phobia, you know, the hatred of, the fear, hatred of homeless people. They're not going to go the extra mile to help someone in that situation in exchange for incredibly good service as an employee, reliable service. They're not going to do that. They would rather let them go and take someone who's mediocre, where they can just stick the piece of paper in the mail and send it off to whatever address they gave them, whether it was a true address or not. Because other homeless people would just lie. They would commit a felony and say, oh yeah, this is my address. Yeah, sure, yeah. One of the other things I got when that family took me in, because I had a resident address then, I could finally go out and get a post office box of my own. Of course, I lost it when Governor Tim Walz shut down the entire economy in Minnesota. I lost that post office box, so now I can't get it back again, because now I don't have a home. But that's a whole nother story. I couldn't shop at Harbor Freight because they were this close to, in a sort of kind of way, being guilty of negligent homicide with me as the victim. I just couldn't do it. Harbor Freight, out. The next one would be Menards. Watch my video about Menards from a year ago. When I said I'm boycotting Menards, I meant it. I don't joke around when it comes to boycotts. Menards engaged in fascism. They required that silly underwear on your face before it was a mandate from the government. They required you to do that pointless, useless gesture of submission to stupid authority when it wasn't even a requirement of government. And they sold the masks at the door. So I, as a poor homeless guy, walk in there and they tell me, whoa, this little kid, you know, 1/3 my age, this little kid's like, oh, hold it, sir, you can't come in here, you've got to have a mask. I was like, I don't have a mask. Well, you can buy one right over there. So let me get this straight. I have to buy this for the privilege of coming in and spending my money at your store? Maybe you think that's normal, but I think you have lost the good of intellect. I'm never shopping at Menards again, and I have never set foot in Menards again, nor will I. And it's a shame, because at that Menards was a beautiful, beautiful woman who I was just really enjoying talking to. I wasn't going to flirt with her. What's the point? I live in a car. But it was just nice to communicate at that kind of level with another human being. Haven't seen her in a year. Well, I saw her outside the other day, but that's not gonna happen either. But Menards was a cool place to shop. They had a lot of really neat stuff. But no more. No more. That little kid, 1/3 my age, just came up he had a jackhammer and a pickaxe and a machine gun, assaulting my dignity as a human being. I spent 30 years studying healthcare fraud, folks. And some little kid who wasn't even born until I was 2/3 the way done with all that research is sitting there going, oh, you can't come in here unless you follow our fraudulent requirements and pay for it yourself. No, Menards, out. Next one would be Lowe's. Lowe's has Craftsman. I liked Craftsman tools when I was younger, when it was a Sears thing. Couldn't do it. Too far away. They just don't have enough of them out here. This car's falling apart. Among other things, all 4 rims and the wheels are bent. The rims are bent. And what that means is that they keep losing air. So when I'm out and about, if I'm in a strange place, I don't know. See, one of the reasons I stay in more or less the same places is because I know where the air is if I have to get air. Because I could just come out, it depends on how the wheel sets. If the wheel sets where that bend is, when I come out, I could have a flat tire. So Lowe's was out. So I went back to Home Depot, where I'd looked at, they have the Ryobi, the DeWalt, the Milwaukee's Best, or whatever the heck that is. I think they even had a couple others there. So I went down there, and they had a deal of $99. You could get a charger and 2 batteries. Now these batteries they called 4 amp hours. The others called them 3 amp, 2 amp, 2.5 amp, 5 amp. Ryobi calls them 4 amp hours. And I've been trying to figure out, my electronics background's pretty rusty. It's been since the early 90s when I've dealt with electronics, and I don't remember the difference, but to me there was a significant difference between amp hours and amps. I could be wrong. But I didn't know how that translated in terms of how long the battery will last to what I had been looking at elsewhere, which measured in amps. But what happened was, I went out, I bought that pack for $99, 2 batteries and a charger, and it was a legitimately good deal if you accept the fact that those batteries are probably cost about $5 to build, and they're selling them for $70 to $130. If you can accept that rape, which is what it is, Home Depot, you get a free tool for under $79. So I got the Ryobi fan. This is one that you can plug in, although oddly enough, Home Depot did not have any extension cords that I could find. They had maybe 50-foot ones, but I live in a car. I need like a 6-foot small extension cord that has the round end, not the big square thing where they come out the sides, because there's this round thing with the 2 plugs and you have to plug it in there. And Home Depot, is for all the hour or so I spent walking around the whole place, I could not find an extension cord that was as simple as what I can get at the dollar store, and that's probably where I'll end up getting it. But then while I was there, I also got one other thing, and I had my cart full of stuff. I had extra battery, a 3rd battery. I was doing all these things because they have vacuum cleaners. I mean, it costs me money every time I have to vacuum this car. And I'm always spilling stuff, always, constantly spilling stuff in here. They have even to the point of a blower, you know, like a mini leaf blower kind of thing. I have times I could use that. It's hardly crucial, but I mean, it is something I've had uses for and could have use for again. But what I ended up getting in addition was this, which is a portable inflator deflator. And from the reviews I saw online, I have absolutely no idea what to expect, because that's just how bad the reviews were. And not to put down everybody who's doing the reviews. I mean, there were a couple that were alright. I mean, they helped you hear how loud it was. You know, when you're homeless and I'm in this car, if I'm stranded somewhere with a flat tire, I'm trying not to draw attention to myself. That's how you get the police coming over, ignoring everyone around with their nice cars, seeing all the rust on my car and saying, "Can I see your ID, please? I have to check for warrants because I've made contact with you." It's like, well, you made contact with me. I didn't make contact with you, officer, so why do you say I have to check for warrants on anyone I make contact with? Because I remember some distinct times when I was well dressed and I had a haircut and all that, and I just went up to you like in a coffee shop or a gas station, and I just spoke to a police officer for a moment, and they made contact with me, but they didn't ask for my ID and check for warrants. I remember one time I walked up to a police officer who was in their car, and I just asked him a question. And they made contact with me, but they didn't check my ID. It's like only when I'm inside this rusted out car do you need to check my ID and look for warrants. But you don't do it with the gangbangers sitting over there who are sitting in there smoking crack and selling it to the high school kids, like happened at Cub Foods. Remember? 4 years ago. I've got the video right on here. Cub Foods. I'm sitting in the parking lot all the time, and I'm just watching this stuff going on. I'm watching the people who are cheating on their spouses. I'm watching the guy who has the prostitute servicing him in the car, and you only see him, by the way, because she's down lower than the window. And I see the drug dealers, the Somali drug dealers, selling drugs to the high school kids. So I go inside and I tell Cub Foods, I tell the manager that. And what happened? She called the police to tell me never to enter their parking lot again. Cub Foods, a Minnesota-based company. Osteo-phobia, the rabid, instinctive, just visceral, bile-spitting hatred and fear of homeless people. Even more so than they fear drug dealers selling deadly toxins to their children. And like I said, when I went out there last night, Memorial Day, whenever you have a holiday, these parking lots are full of this kind of stuff. You never look at it. You go in, you get your stuff, and you leave, but it's going on all around you. Pull off to the side sometime and spend an hour or 2 hours watching what goes on in these parking lots. You'll see things in a whole different way than you did before when you see what actually goes on out there. Right in front of your eyes if you paid attention. The very same parking spot as 4 years ago when they were selling drugs to those kids, the drug dealer was functioning out there. Cub Foods didn't do anything about it, but they got rid of me. Haven't seen me in that parking lot in the last 4 years until yesterday. My point being, these things make a whole lot of noise. You ever put air in your car? You know, that's what it sounds like. That's what this thing does. So whenever I'm out and about, my tires go down, which is often, if I'm going to use this thing, it's going to draw all kinds of attention to me. And that's when it became important as I was watching these reviews. Is this thing going to pump up my tire in 30 seconds, or is it going to take longer? One of the reviews I saw said that just from not total flat, but the kind of flat that I usually have, up to normal, took 16 minutes. This thing sounds like a jet engine. So I'm going to be out there in this car, sweating bullets, my car full of stuff, trying not to draw attention to myself because Minnesotans hate homeless people and they hurt homeless people. But I've got to do something about my tires that keep going flat because of the bent rims. So I spent an additional $40 on this. It used to be $50, it went down to $40. I just grabbed it. Give it a try. Are you even seeing? Oh, I've been showing the wrong side the whole time, haven't I? Sorry about that. Now the nice thing about this too is that if I see someone else who has a flat tire, I can use this to help them now. Because that's the kind of thing I do. A couple weeks ago, for reasons I'm not going into in this video, the one where I told you I would tell you about what it's like having to open this window and risking falling asleep, having the car running in the summer versus winter, all that, that's a whole different thing. But suffice it to say that because of the summer, the battery's going dead more often here. It doesn't in winter, and then you get spring and everything's cool, and then when it gets summer, then the battery starts dying frequently again. You try getting a jump in Minnesota. When you ask someone to jump your engine, what you're asking them to do is to help another human being, someone who is not them. Minnesotans don't like that. They don't like that. That's Minnesota nice. Okay? And they will give you every ridiculous excuse for why they can't help give you a jump, which takes, for someone who knows what they're doing, takes 2-3 minutes. And you can get someone who is literally stranded and who otherwise might end up paying $250 for help. You can have the honor and the privilege of getting them going again, and you can drive away feeling good that you did something wonderful for another person. But Minnesotans don't want anything to do with that. So I was stuck at that gas station, and nobody would help. So I went inside, and the employees kind of knew me in the sense that I'm in there all the time. And one of them said to one of the guys who works there, "Why don't you go out and give him a jump?" And as I and this guy were walking outside, the guy, without even trying to put it under his breath, he just blurted it out. He's just like, "What am I, roadside service?" Made me feel wonderful. He didn't see it as an honor and a privilege to be able to help somebody who's in need. I do. That's one reason I got one of these. And another thing I had to get because the battery kept dying was a lithium battery pack that you can use to jump start your car. Now hopefully that'll solve the problem there of my battery. If the battery dies, I'll be able to use this to jump start it. I just got it, so I don't know if it works or not. But also, I can help other people. So if I can't pull my car up to where they are because they're boxed in or something, you can just take that thing and put it right next to the battery and just, whoo, away you go. To me, that's exciting. I can now help people who need a jump in their battery, and I can help people who have a flat tire. I'm just a useless, worthless, homeless person. But if you ask these Minnesotans for help, "Get away from me! Get away from me!" Especially if they know you're homeless. Oh, I've had people who, they're okay for a moment, and then they come over here and they look and they get close to my car and they see all the junk in here, and they can kind of tell, this guy looks like he lives in that car, and all of a sudden their whole demeanor changes. It's called osteo-phobia. Same thing as racism, only directed against homeless people. People who do not have a home. When I went to Home Depot, oh, before I continue, I got a couple other things. Let's see what's in the bag of tricks here. I got a $5 pair of glasses. The reason is because I keep using these dollar store glasses. This stuff like peels off and sticks to your face, so as I'm walking around I've got all these little pieces of plastic stuck to my face, and these scratch almost immediately as soon as you get them. So I thought, well, instead of $1, I'll spend $5. Let's see if these are any better. So I got that. And I'm missing something. Something fell out. But I had to try to figure out how am I supposed to deal with this. Because now, I mean, I don't have to stop fast or anything. Just stopping at a normal pace at a stop sign, this thing just goes, whee, goes flying. Swings back when I take off again. And it's just not feasible. And if I have it down, it hangs down so low I can't even see the road. That's because the clip on there broke. So I got these two big magnets. And somewhere, I don't know where, somewhere in one of my bags or in storage, I have double-sided sticky tape. And I'm going to see if using that magnet will help keep this thing up there. Especially since the hinge end is now all cracked and that thing's just going to fall off completely if I don't do something soon. That was like $4. Okay? Now when I'm in there, they have these displays in the center aisles. They also have it in the tool area, but in the center aisles they have that, they're advertising that deal, which is if you accept these batteries are ridiculously overpriced, that they're just raping people, and that's what they're doing. The battery costs about $5. And they're charging $70, $100, $130 for them. They're just stealing. This is theft. It's exploitation. The exploitation of people who don't know any better, or they don't you're just sucking their dignity away. Home Depot. So I go in there and it says if you buy one of these, where is it anyway? There it is. So here's the battery and the chargers. And by the way, what's in my hands right here weighs a lot. It's very heavy. And I've got to carry this thing around whenever I find a place where I can charge these things. It is pretty heavy. So you buy this for $99 and you get a tool free up to $79. So I'm looking at the tools and I go and I ask employees, well, can I get this tool with it? It's under $79. And I would get different answers because they didn't know. They didn't have the foggiest idea. There's big huge signs on the outside of Home Depot says, now hiring event. It's an event. Ooh, party on, dude. It's an event. $15 per hour. Ooh. Surely you won't end up living in a car if you're making $15 an hour. Oh, that's so much money. Well, what was happening was all these employees in there are congregating next to each other. So it'd be like street gangs. There'd be a gang of 4 or 8 of these employees just standing together talking to each other near the front door and the checkout. And I'd go up there and I'm just like, well, am I supposed to pick him over her or should I pick that person? And plus I feel really kind of guilty interrupting their conversation. It looks like they're having fun. I don't want to, I don't want to be the bad guy going in there and ruining all their fun. They're smiling, they're laughing, they're having a good time. And if I go and ask them to work, I don't like feeling guilty because I walk into a store, folks. I get better performance than that to my employer. Why don't they? Maybe they hire the same way that Harbor Freight does. Harbor Freight could have had me, but they didn't want me because hiring me required a little bit of extra effort on their part. It required them to care about their new employee like a member of their family, but they didn't want to do that. They left me out to die, which is what I was prepared to do very soon thereafter, were it not for the grace of God bringing that family into my life. But Home Depot, same old stuff. So I'd have to keep trying to get these people. They really didn't know their products at all. It's funny because they're standing around talking the whole day. They could have spent that time learning about their products, learning their job, improving their performance. They could have been doing that, but no, they're just standing around or maybe staring at a phone. I didn't really see them staring at phones though. A lot of these stores like Walmart, especially the Somalis, they're just sitting there with their burk on, just chewing gum and staring at a phone, hiding in, behind the burlap rolls or something, and you're not going to ask them for help, that's for sure. So I need help with this. I have specific questions, and here's the thing. This is the day I'm in the hotel. So I'm paying all this money for the hotel, and I have to leave the hotel to go to Home Depot. I would love for that to be an in and out operation. That way the money I spend on the hotel actually pays for me enjoying the hotel. I was there for almost 2 hours. If these people had known the answer to my questions and they had been approachable from the beginning, it might have been a half hour. Might have been. I should not have been there for 2 hours. That's 2 hours of the hotel I paid for just sitting there empty. Or were these gangbangers and these creepy employees going in my room and rifling through my stuff? I have no way to know. The gangbangers, by the way, if you don't know, at the hotel, these people are here every single day. They live in the hotel. They don't seem to have a job, yet they live in a hotel. I have a job, and I can only afford 1.5 days in a hotel every single week, and it costs as much as my home did before. Just in case you haven't watched my other videos, you might want to know that. Excuse me? Oh god, this stuff's getting hot. Ugh. Oh goodness. And so I'm in Home Depot and I have these questions. I'm not getting answers. One kid came up, or no, this one girl was standing next to all of this stuff, all these green boxes, rows of the green boxes. She's standing there just la-di-da-di-da, waiting, for a customer to ask her for help. So I asked her for help. And, she was honest, and I appreciate that. That's okay. She said, I don't know. Let me call someone who does. And I'm like, fine, that's cool. Maybe you can't know everything. There's a lot of products in here. So, and the young kid came over. He's very nice, very, very nice. but I can't remember what my specific question is. I'll bog down the video if I tell you, if I think about it. But it was something about the high performance battery. Anyway, he answered the question, but he added something to it that I knew from my research was just patently false. It was completely wrong. So immediately I'm thinking in my head, okay, well, if he's that wrong about this, then he really doesn't know any of this other stuff. So what he was telling me, I couldn't really rely on. So I just kind of gave up on it. So I gave up on that whole course of what I was trying to do. So I finally figured out what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this stuff, and I go to the checkout line. There's all the people up there milling about, and I look at the checkout line, and I'm just thinking to myself, I don't know where the checkout is. This is the most ridiculous looking. There's these stands, there's computer terminals. There's no obvious place where a line should form with customers who want to spend their money. I didn't know what to do, and I felt like an idiot, but I had to go up and interrupt these people and say, where's the checkout line? And they all look at me like, it's right there. And they just kind of wave in the general direction of all this stuff, and I'm like, where? Right there. And this girl, she like storms and walks over there and says, right there, right there. And I look over there, and it looks like what it looked like to me, and I told him so. I said, this looks like a TSA checkpoint at the airport. I mean, it had big, like, bulletproof glass, or what looked like it, you know, cages, and nowhere did I see, like, a flat surface where you would put, yeah, I want to purchase this, and where you put the product there, and it goes down the conveyor belt, and they scan it. There wasn't anything like that, which is why I was confused as to where's the checkout line. And they're all looking at me like I'm an idiot or something, and I'm looking at them like, what is wrong with you people? You're running a store this size, and you've got nothing to do but sit around and talk, and you can't even set up your checkout line in a way that people can tell it's a checkout line? You can't even do that much work? Really? And I'm living in a car? Those are the kinds of things I used to fix in my former jobs. I was Mr. Fix-It when I was a revenue manager. This is how I made companies like Home Depot millions and millions of dollars. By improving and streamlining and training and doing the things that they're not doing. But every one of them, I bet you, I could be wrong, but I'll bet you every one of them is going to sleep in a bed tonight. Sleep inside a home. And they're looking at me funny. And then, while I was trying to figure out what to do, that lady comes back again, and she wasn't being mean or anything. She's a little off, but she wasn't being mean. I don't think she was trying to be nasty to me. But she comes over and then she says, Sir, if you're using a card, here's the reader. So I look in between these two booths, TSA bulletproof Al Capone booths, and there's the credit card reader. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I step over there and I look at it, and it's got all these advertisements, you know, get free blah blah emails from blah. It's got all this junk all over it. I'm like, where do you put the card? I mean, I can't see a slot to put it in there. It doesn't say anything about tapping it. I don't see a slider on there. There's something that looks like it might be a slider. And then the kid who's behind there, he starts getting a little bit snotty. He's like, well, just put the card in. Just insert it. I'm thinking, like, where? This isn't the most obvious reader I've ever seen in my life. I use these things daily. All over the place. I've never seen one that was so hard to figure out. So I just take a chance and I stick the card in the insert, and it went in. And there you go. And these people are just looking at me, and just the way they're looking at me, and the kind of snottiness of it all, when I didn't do anything wrong. They're the ones who are not doing anything and getting paid for it, or they're looking at me like, what's this guy's problem? Well, my problem is I used to get paid a lot of money in the hotel business to fix issues. Mr. Fix-It. That's what I did. In many ways, that's what I did in medical as well. I'm good at that kind of thing. You give me a system that's totally messed up, and I'll fix it. And I'll make it efficient, and I'll make it profitable. That's what I do, and I do it well. So I've got all this stuff with, 40 years of experience going through my head, and all these dingbats are just sitting there going, what's wrong with this guy? And just the mismatch, and I'm the one living in a car. I'm the one who's there spending my money, not a stimulus check, but money that I work to earn, on a fan to try to stay alive when it's 120 degrees out. And this fan, from what I hear, is hardly better than just having a paper plate in your hand and doing this. That's how much air it puts out. Do you see why I had a problem being there? At the time I was done, when they handed me the receipt, I actually just stood there for a second. And they were probably wondering what's going on there. I stood there for, I don't know, maybe 12 seconds. And what's going through my mind is, I am so tempted to just get my money back. I am so tempted. Under ordinary circumstances, just like I boycott Menards and I'm never setting foot in there again, I don't need this treatment. I don't need it. I don't need this humiliation. I don't need those people getting paid and those people living in a home when I don't get paid jack for what I do and I don't get to be in a home. And I have to spend my money, not someone else's money from a stimulus check. I'm the one out paying for people's stimulus checks. And my reward's to live in a car that's 120 degrees. If it weren't life-threatening, I would have just turned around and said, you know what? Give me my money back. Give me my money back. I didn't come into your store to have my dignity attacked. That's not what I came here for. I came here to shop for a product and leave. Quickly, by the way. I didn't expect to be here wasting this time where I'm paying for a hotel that I can't even sit in. Now, I understand that good help is hard to find, but you know what? That was my job. Among other things, my job was to take the help and make them better, to improve them, to make them part of a real team. Look at my first videos on this channel, way back, 200 videos ago, how not to do business. One of them was about teamwork, wasn't it? I've been part of a real world-class teams, not just groups of people where someone comes in a suit and a briefcase and they start calling everything world-class, but they function like I just described at Home Depot. I'm talking about world-class, people who are that competent. That's what I used to do back in another life, before I had the misfortune of moving to Minnesota and learning the hard way that Minnesota nice is a myth. So there you go, folks. There's a homeless guy's take on buying some tools. $171 flew away from my pocket today. I don't even know if this stuff will work. And as I've been reading this to you, I've had at least three that I've seen gangbangers out here milling about. The first one you saw in the film briefly. I've got another one sitting over there right now. These people have no jobs. My work pays for them to stay in a hotel 7 days a week. My work pays for me to stay in a hotel 1.5 days a week. If I sound a little angry in this video, maybe it has something to do with that. I hope this helps you buy the best tools that you can get at the best price. Thanks for watching. Oh, hey, guess what? You know, I told you there was a third thing I bought. Small item. I couldn't find it before. I found it. Here it is. You might be wondering, why would a homeless guy need a plunger? After all, he doesn't have a bathroom. He has nowhere to maintain his hygiene. If he has to go to the bathroom, or if he has explosive diarrhea every single day for 6 years because he can't eat nutritious food, he has nowhere to go to the bathroom. Why would he spend his own money on a plunger? Well, folks, the reason is similar to, I'll show you something here. This is at my workplace. About 2 weeks ago, I come in the beginning of the day and there are 3 AA batteries on the ground, on the pavement, right where people walk in to get up to the entrance to the front door. So, in other words, pretty much everyone who works there, except the people who park down below the building, everyone else had to walk right over those AA batteries, or they could drive over them or actually step on them the entire day. As they went out to lunch and they left, they went over them again. As they came back from lunch, they went over them again. As they left for the day, they went over them again. 9 hours later, when I left the place, the parking lot was completely empty, and there were the batteries. You see, the professionals, the Minnesota professionals, it's too much for them to clean up after themselves. So they just dumped their batteries there, and nobody throughout the entire day bothered to pick them up. Can you guess who picked them up, folks? Me. You might watch my video called Fresh Garbage for the Homeless, where I tell you about how I keep that whole place clean, because all of those professional Minnesotans keep throwing their garbage all over the ground and nobody will pick it up. So if I didn't pick it up, nobody would. But I'm just a useless, worthless, homeless person. Anyway, so with that as a precursor, why did I buy a plunger? Because everywhere I go, folks, whether it's at work, whether it's a gas station where I have to use the bathroom, or this hotel that I pay all this money for, you know, where I can only afford to stay for, 2 nights, but it's a day and a half. I can only afford to stay there that long. None of these people maintain their toilets. So far too often, I'll have that explosive diarrhea because of my diet, and I'll run into a bathroom and I'll look at the toilet and it's just covered. Somebody just took a dump right on the toilet seat itself. It's smeared all over. It's on the floor. And I have to go that badly. You try asking one of these employees, you know, like the Home Depot employees. You try asking a Minnesota employee who's paid $15 an hour to go fix the toilet and see how quickly they act on it for you. You try asking this hotel here, this junk dump hotel I'm stuck staying at, to do anything for you. Anything. I have to do it myself. I have a shovel in the back of my car in the winter. I have to shovel my own snow from around my car so I can even get in here because the hotel won't do it. Anyway, not to get into a new topic, that's why I bought a plunger with my own money that I worked to earn, so I could do even more people's jobs for them. People who live in homes all around Minnesota. But hey, they can't be wrong. They've said so themselves. Minnesotans say that they're right and I'm wrong. Homeless people are the lazy bums, not them. That's all I have to say.